without further ado, I give you our own Maureen Muldoon, who's going to call forth and claim all kinds of wonderful things today.
Thank you. Thanks, Bella. Thanks, everyone who's shown up to make this conversation happen, and for everyone who just showed up. Thank you, everyone, for showing up and joining together. It's just so nice to have a community of friends who are committed to delving a little bit deeper into the concepts of A Course in Miracles in regards to how to apply them to our lives. And so, yeah, it's never what you think it is, because we hear about call forth and claim, and Jody Murphy and I do that all the time on Thursday morning, if you want to come to that movement class, but, and we do it all the time, but what does it really mean in regards to A Course in Miracles? So I'm going to start off with a story that is from the Four Agreements, from Don Miguel Ruiz. And he talks about this 3,000 years ago. There was a man who was really interested in being a medicine man, but he was not fulfilled with what he was learning in the world. So I want to stop there, actually, because although this story happened 3,000 years ago, it seems like everything repeats itself, that this is sort of current. There's a major debate going on today about what should be taught in schools and who gets to write the history. And even the line, like, who gets to write the history, will tell you how susceptible our schools and ourselves are to thoughts that can be ego projections. Because history shouldn't be reinterpreted, for one thing. And in, regards to A Course in Miracles, there is no history. So it's a really interesting thing to look at. But in regards to 12-step, taking an inventory of where you've been, we don't really want to change what has happened in the past, because it's the truth, and we might not like the truth, but we can handle the truth. And that helps us to maybe, move into a better versions of ourselves. We may not have always been our best selves, but we can learn from our history, and so as not to repeat it. So there's a great importance in knowing, like, what is the source of your information? Where are you getting your sources from? And is that source based in truth? And here in the world, we attempt to learn and to glean information by getting information. But in the spiritual realm, we attempt to unlearn. The egoic mind doesn't like to unlearn. It's very hell-bent on acquiring and getting and establishing its version of intellect and wisdom, and then placing that intellect in a hierarchy on how and who gathers and assimilates information. But even after we acquire all the wisdom of the world, we still end up feeling hungry for God. And, so going to God takes us to a source of true, clear wisdom. And people get, tripped up on the word God. I get that. What is God? You can think of God as pure, uncut benevolence. And what is benevolence? Benevolence is kindness, and kindness is intelligence. And if you were to ask, like, what would kindness have me do? That would include and inspire a very wise direction, wisdom that you might not find in a book or from school. What would kindness have me do? And since this is our year of kindness, it's a good question. So anyway, back to our story. There's this medicine man, and he finds himself at this point where he has, desired to learn more, but he can't find it in the world. And so he goes into this cave and he falls asleep. And when he wakes, he looks at his hands and he realizes, oh my gosh, I'm made of stars. And then he looks up at the stars and he realizes that the stars didn't create the light, but that the light created the stars, and that everything was connected with this light, and that it lives beneath and back of all things, and that the light was truth and wisdom and knowledge and freedom and expansion and laughter and creativity and all, benevolence, all that's good and beautiful and holy. And all of that is an extension of God, or light, or life, or love, or benevolence and kindness. And so as he recognized this, he saw that he was one with everything. And when he turned to go back to the people, he had no words to express what he now knew. He now had gnosis, and his words failed him. but they could tell from just looking at him that he had changed, that he was radiating, that he no longer had judgment of anyone or anything. And he saw that most people didn't see the seamless connection of all things, and that most people were still dreaming of a dream of separation. So according to the four agreements, this Toltec wisdom, we're all in this dream. And that's the truth for many different religions and philosophies, Brahmin or A Course in Miracles, that we're in this dream. So what good are words in a dream? And A Course kind of asks us that. Some people, surely talk in their sleep. But what does that get us? We're here not to talk in our sleep, but to wake up. So we want to begin to unknow. We want to begin to question. We want to go into that cave. We are basically like these blank slates that come in and become domesticated through the repetition of agreements and the focusing of our attention on very narrow options that our moms, our dads, our religions, our schools, our cultures, placed upon us. And we just accepted it without question. So we learn what is acceptable and then what is not acceptable in our tribes. And we make agreements and loyalties to these ideas. And we're told to be agreeable. And we're praised for being agreeable, for going along, for not questioning, do what I say, not what I do. So again, we get to look at words and how to call forth and claim. But first, before we even try and call forth and claim, we want to look at everything that's been unquestioned, because those are the blocks, and we cannot call forth and claim something that we have no idea about. And in order to, fully remove the unquestioned blocks so that we can call forth and claim and fully embody then our full potential, not just what's been accepted by our tribe. The hardest thing you'll ever do is leave your tribe. Leave the limited ideas and begin the journey into your limitless self, into the mystery of yourself. It's very comforting to stay within the confines of what your tribe has already known. And as soon as somebody starts to move and leave the tribe, everyone in the tribe is going to say, we don't go there. We've never been there. We've never been wealthy. We've never been, divorced. We've never been fill in the blank. And so you want to try and compromise yourself to stay within the guidelines of the tribe. So we begin to question, which is not always welcomed in the world. If we question, it's seemed as something that's like a rebel. Like, how dare you question? Don't rock the boat. This is how things are. And we love that story of the emperor's new clothes, but nobody really wants to be the kid to question the king. That's what it feels like when we're leaving the tribe, because it could surely bring death or the risk of being exiled from the kingdom. And I tell you this because there's no use changing your words if you're not willing to change your consciousness. And if you're staying in comfortable comfort zones, you're not going to reach the full potential of your consciousness. So we can see that we've changed our consciousness when we stop hiding or eclipsing ourselves. In fear, we hide our truth, we hide our true feelings, we water ourselves down, we edit ourselves, we begin leaving important things out of conversations, we don't put certain things on our resume, and we do our best to hide ourselves under the bed in the back of the closet, neatly tucked away so you don't offend anybody. But we don't say what is ours to say for fear of what they will say. And who are they? You know what I mean? This invisible force that we've given, all of this meaning to in the projection of our dreams. So you don't have to, and you shouldn't. And the Course tells us actually that we shouldn't be, trying to put forth this sterilized, anesthetized version of ourselves, that we have to and get to honor both the elegance and the untamed nature of ourselves. And that's what's truly helpful. And here's the thing, even if we're afraid to tell our truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, the Holy Spirit has other plans. If you're working closely with the Holy Spirit, you don't have too much of a say in it anyhow. It says in the Course in Miracles to be specific and to leave nothing out. And in the 12 steps, they say this is rigorous honesty, except for when to do so would harm others. And I would say erase that condition, because truth, it might harm others, but it would be more painful to live in a lie. We can survive pain. We've all survived pain. But to survive, to try and live under an illusion of something is basically death. So you have your own experience, strength, and hope. you have this experience, strength, and hope. And your experience, strength, and hope is not pretty. It's really not pretty. But if we don't tell our wrinkled, warded, wretched truth, if we risk living an edited version of ourselves, and eventually we risk losing ourselves completely because we're fitting in, which is not good. It's not what we're here to do. It's our diversity, not our conformity, that's most useful to the plan of God. So some of these schools of thought are focusing now on not necessarily critical thinking, but rather assisting in memorizing a sterilized version of a story that never happened. Okay, so we're not robots. We want to be thinking. We want to be living. We want to be thriving. We want to be questioning. There's a podcast that I just listened to called Teaching Texas. And in the 1970s, on the outskirts of, in Hawkins, Texas, there was a couple that found one of their kids' school books. And they didn't really have an education background, but they lived in Texas, and their concern ignited this national movement and several decades of influence over what the rest of the world learned. And I'll put the link in the chat if you want to listen to that. I found it to be really interesting around words and how they can, shape our society. And basically in the US, the education system buys these textbooks en masse. And because Texas is the largest state and they bought books from kindergarten to high school, they bought the most books. So they dictated the content with their buying power. And this Texas couple took it upon themselves to help to the system to so they spent hours, really generously proofreading and making corrections and establishing themselves as authorities on what needed to be in an education and what didn't need to be in an education. So it's interesting, how we watch our zeitgeist be carved out by interesting influences. So again, you can listen to that podcast. But it's just to say that education is not always about getting us to think, but getting us to conform to a thought. So editing, words to tamper with the truth so that you can, so you can no longer actually trust the words. And in the course, it says words are not important. Anyone can put together a recipe, but it takes a real way shower, a guy who knows the truth, who actually questions and is able to toss out all the maps and find their own path, their own gnosis. This is what you're here for. It's not easy to follow your own path, because it's not a path that's been traveled before, because it was designed specifically for you. And as you honor your path and your truth, then you can begin to walk another home. So how do you do that? When you get to that point of walking another home, you use words. So you ask these questions: where would you have me go? What would you have me do? And what would you have me say, and to whom? And that is what good words can do in a dream, but they're not as important as the consciousness. A Course in Miracles says that we actually don't need words. It says that words play no part in healing. What is healing? According to A Course in Miracles, healing is forgiveness. So words play no part in forgiveness. In the 12th step, it says to us to make a direct amends wherever possible using your words. But here's the thing: if you don't heal your mind around that forgiveness, you're going to go ahead and repeat that over and over and over again. So it's not just about the words, it's about the consciousness. And again, the Course says that words play no role in forgiveness. Wouldn't you have liked to know that when you were younger and your parents were saying to you, say you're sorry? And you could have said something like, I'm not sorry, because words play no role in forgiveness. I'm sure that wouldn't have gone over too well, but it would have been nice to know. The truth is, saying I'm sorry is not actually a helpful thing to say, because it's not actually true. No son of God is sorry. Have we made mistakes? Yeah. But everything blesses everyone. Do we believe that? Even the perceived mistakes can be transformed by the Holy Spirit. For all the trespassing that I have endured, I'm not sorry any of it happened, because I have learned from it. And for all of my own trespassing, I'm not really sorry, because I have learned from it. And the illusion of being sorry brings guilt and shame and remorse. And believing that I have been trespassed against brings the feeling of anger and righteous vindication. Where did those things get me? Except to nowhere. And more important than what does it get me is, What can I give? What can I give out when I'm in the state of shame and guilt and anger and righteous vindication? I can't give anything worthy out, nothing. So these blocks to love's awareness, we get to really look at and be really committed to the precision of our words that actually are in alignment with the truth of our spirit. I don't want you to be sorry. I really don't. And I will not be sorry, because in etymology, the word sorry means sorrow. And in A Course in Miracles, happiness is my function. When my kids were little and they did something, instead of saying sorry, I would say to them, say I'm learning, because that's actually what's happening. And all of these places where you feel like you didn't live up to your full potential, you're learning. That's all that's happening. Learning, and then leaning into your brilliance and into your benevolence, let that which is designed to initiate you. Let yourself rise from these things and roll that grievance around in your consciousness until it's transformed into a pearl of wisdom that makes your soul take flight with so much gratitude that you can look at that which sought to annihilate you and say, thank you. Thank you for setting me on fire. I'm so grateful to remember that I'm a fucking phoenix. I wouldn't have known that, because I certainly wouldn't have set myself on fire. So you're a phoenix too. And we're designed to rise, to reclaim, to reclamate, to return, to restore, all of these things, this resurrection. This is what we're designed to do. And we get hung up and strung out and fearful about our own growth opportunities. So back to words. Besides, words are just symbols twice removed, and we talked about this last week, the difference between a cat and the experience of holding a cat. The word cat is a symbol. The actual cat is also a symbol. But we're asked to use these symbols that would be most helpful. So words are not needed, but they're helpful. A Course in Miracles tells us that we can reach and teach with words, unless your words belie your action. So what does that look like? If you attempt to teach fearlessness from a fearful place, if you attempt to teach generosity from a stingy place, if you attempt to teach open-mindedness from a controlling place, if you attempt to teach kindness from a caustic place, you will fail. The student will learn what you're not speaking. So using words, but using them honestly and impeccably and consistently. Don't cast spells. Don't use your words to condemn or criticize or insult or insist even. Don't use them for anything but what they are intended to place into symbols, the ideas and inspirations that you gather from your own connection with spirit. Now that's a major problem, because many people tell me, I don't hear spirit. I don't hear the voice of my inner teacher. And I would say, keep trying. You will, because God speaks to you all through the day. And honestly, I would just have stopped it there. But as I continue to study A Course in Miracles, it says, I would always say to people, go to your inner teacher, go to your inner teacher, go to your inner teacher. And a lot of people, maybe 30%, come back to me and say, I don't hear anything. And so I would sit down with them and I would listen for them. And I came to find that in the Course in Miracles, that's exactly what God would have us do. That it's, that if you cannot hear, or you haven't developed that sense yet, you go to a trusted friend. And the Course says you can reach and help through words to those who yet are unable to hear in silence. So that's what love would have us do. That's what kindness would have us do, is to listen, and if you can hear the voice of God, then you should share it. I have done this for people, and people have done it for me. But here's the thing, people fear that. Many people, they fear having that intimate connection. But if you're at the point where you don't hear, ask for help. Listen to a teacher or a friend or somebody who you trust, who's able to hear until you can hear, or until you pretend that you can't, you stop pretending that you can't hear. Because we all can hear, but sometimes we just have these very fearful blocks. Only your own thoughts can harm you. So why would it not be okay for me to have the thoughts of God? You might think, like, how will I know if it's spirit's thoughts or my own ego? You will feel it. It will ring true in every cell of your being. And if somebody's giving you their own personal advice that has nothing to do with spirit's agenda, you will hear the difference. And the more you get still, the more you listen, the more you will attune your own understanding of that, listening past your worries and your own assumptions and your own agendas. The more you get still, the more you'll hear. The Course says that a teacher of God must learn to use words in a new way. And I'm using the feminine pronoun for this section. It says the teacher of God must learn to use words in a new way. Gradually, she learns to let her words be chosen for her by ceasing to decide for herself what she will say. The process is merely a special case of the lesson in the workbook that says, I will step back and let him lead the way. The teacher of God accepts the words which are offered her, and she gives them as she receives them. She does not control the direction of her speaking. She listens and hears, and she speaks. A major hindrance is in this aspect of her learning is that the teacher of God fears the validity of what she hears. So that's what we do sometimes. We fear that connection. And what she hears, because here's the thing, what she hears may indeed seem quite startling. It may also seem to be quite irrelevant to the present problem as she perceives it. So you've done this, you've taken something to the Holy Spirit gives you an answer. You're like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? But so that's a block to it. And then it even says that it may in fact confront the teacher with a situation that appears to be very embarrassing to her. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I have, where a topic comes up in a conversation where we're teaching and I begin to get a vision of an inspiration to tell a story. And I think, oh no, I'm not sharing that. That will not come out of my mouth hole. And despite all my resistance, I watch this word parade move from my mouth and I think, Holy Mother of God, how can I be sharing this story? And then what happens is a very bad day for ego and a very good day for spirit. And the Course says that all of these judgments that have no value, they are her own coming from a shabby self-perception that she would best leave behind. So I attempt to leave behind my shabby self-perceptions. If you want to be a teacher of God, you cannot hold on to the truth that might be helpful, even if it's embarrassing. I once taught with this man who was very committed to his shabby self-perceptions. And he would say to me, you share like that, but I can't. And I am not comfortable having my business out there. But here's the thing. Everyone knew. He didn't have to say it. His life screamed the truth of who he was. Everyone knew. Self-perception, self-defense, none of that is needed. What are we protecting? And what needs protection must be weak. Instead, it says in the Course, judge not the words that come from you, but offer them confidently. They are far wiser than your own. God's teachers have God's words behind their symbols, and he himself gives to the words they use the power of his spirit, raising them from meaningless symbols to the call for heaven itself. So is there something more for you to be or do than to speak the words that call for heaven? Is there some better way to be lit up in love than to prove that the medicine man, what he found in the cave, is also true for you? That you're made of light. Like he did, we must go into the cave and court some silence. I had a friend call me a couple weeks ago and she shared with me this story about this annihilation. And I kept hearing, like, court the silence, you're the phoenix. And so because this was true for her, I also, always take my own advice. And I did the same thing. And, what I found is, as I went into the silence, is that the words that came for me was a song. And I started writing the song. And I remember going to a funeral where this rabbi once told me that when something dies, you let yourself weep and cry into a puddle on the floor. And then you let yourself get really, really, really still. And then you let that stillness transform your pain into a song. I've been caught in silence after what I heard. I've been seeking stillness. You can take my word, 'cause I'm standing in the fire and I'm howling at the night. I am rising like a phoenix. This is gonna be my best flight. My best flight. So where we get to go into the cave, go into your silence, listen, look at your grievances, transform them, and then sing your songs of resurrection, of reclamation. Reclamation means to reframe, to reclaim your true self. It's not the words that matter, but your commitment to your truth of who you really are. And your being is screaming so loud that your words mean nothing in the end. You don't get what you say, you get what you are. And that's the word.